Hi, Emily.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
How are you?
I'm all right. Hanging in there, enjoying the beautiful weather here in California. Yeah, staying home, pretty much keeping quiet. So it's kind of nice.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you again for doing this. We
Yeah,
appreciate it. People are just all, it looks like, popping on now.
yeah.
Um,
Okay. Well, we'll wait for about a couple of minutes and then we'll get started.
okay.
Minds and meditation for a few minutes. So sitting comfortably with our back straight. Spending a few moments checking in with our body and relaxing any tension in our neck, in our face, in our shoulders. And then putting our attention on the breath. And holding it there with mindfulness. Allowing the thoughts to just subside or fade into the background. Not giving the thoughts any attention. Just putting our focus on the breath. And then trying to set a positive motivation for today. So expanding our awareness, remembering that there are 7 billion other people on this planet. And countless others, fish and insects and other animals, birds. We're all just trying to be happy. And who are all experiencing unwanted difficulties over and over again. And who have minds that are uncontrolled, that still have mental afflictions, that bring oneself and others pain and difficulties. And create causes for further suffering and difficult circumstances. So developing a wish to tame our own minds, to enhance our inner qualities, and even attain our highest potential. In order to be of benefit to ourselves and to others. Okay, I hope you can all hear me okay. I noticed that the volume of my voice dropped as I was leading the meditation. I'm trying not to do that, but can everybody hear me? Okay. All right, so today is our Mahamudra class. What we've covered so far is meditating on the conventional nature of mind. So meditating on the clarity and awareness of the mind, or the clear and knowing nature of the mind. The mind, which is like space, is non-material, is clear, and allows things to arise, thoughts and perceptions to arise within it. So we've been meditating on that conventional nature of mind. And then last week we also introduced a meditation called Settling the Mind in its Natural State. So the first meditation, meditating on the conventional nature of mind, we've been doing shamatha, or single-pointed concentration on that space-like nature of mind. We need to do that in order to develop focus on a particular object, and in this case on the mind in the Mahamudra practice. So we try to develop an undistracted mind, a focused mind, a mind that has some control, and based on that, then we can move into Vipassana, or insight meditation. Because if our mind is completely distracted, then it's very difficult to do the insight meditation. So we're meditating on the conventional nature of mind. And then we did a little bit on settling on the mind in its natural state, where we meditate on the mind and as well as the mental events that arise. So we observe the mind, the space-like nature of mind, but we allow the thoughts to arise, the thoughts and the perceptions to arise without getting caught up in them, without getting distracted by them. We just allow them to come and go. So with that meditation, we maintain an alertness of mind. It's a little bit more relaxed and loose than the shamatha meditation on the conventional nature of mind. You're allowing the thoughts in the second meditation, you're allowing the thoughts to arise, but we remain attentive to whatever is going on. We don't get sucked into the thought. We just allow them to come and go. And if we don't get engaged with the thought, if we don't follow the thought, if we don't get carried away by the thought, then the thought automatically dissolves back. So when we're aware of the thoughts that arise, then they lose their power. They lose their power to distract us. They lose their power to disturb our minds. When we can just see them as thoughts, and then or we can see the perceptions that are arising without getting caught up in them. Yeah, you're observing without grasping. Yeah, so that's a very nice meditation to prepare us for kind of between sessions, especially walking around. The idea ultimately is to maintain this, some level of awareness of that space of mind throughout the day, and notice when a dangerous thought is arising, or an obsessive thought is arising, or a negative thought is arising, or an unconstructive thought, or a jealous thought, or a worried thought, or any kind of unconstructive thought. When that's arising, we just notice as it's arising, and instead of immediately getting lost in it, that thought, instead of immediately getting caught up in that thought, we just see it for what it is. And the idea is ultimately to let that go. Of course, it's easier to do that with the less strong thoughts, right? Mental afflictions oftentimes need more than just, oh, that's a thought, in order to let them go. So today we'll talk about other methods, and especially Mahamudra methods, to work with thoughts so that we don't get caught up in them, so the thoughts don't become mental afflictions, all right, or disturbing emotions, right? So mental afflictions or disturbing emotions are thoughts that we're grasping onto that disturb the state of mind, disturb our mental continuum, disturb our mind. And they can disturb the mind in the moment when it's arising, or they can actually disturb the mind for a period of time, even after the emotion has dissipated. And anger being a very common example, right? We may get really worked up about something that someone said to us, or did to us, or didn't do that they were supposed to do. Maybe anger can flash, and even if we're able to let go of that anger, after a minute or a couple of minutes or 5 minutes, there's this kind of agitated energy in our mind that can last for hours or even the rest of the day. So that's the nature of a disturbing emotion, is it disturbs or agitates our mind for some period of time. Yeah. So our disturbing emotions or mental afflictions are strong thoughts, and thoughts that we're grasping to and solidifying. Yeah. So, for example, you know, anger is a response to an unpleasant feeling, right? So, so an unpleasant feeling arises. For example, it could be hurt, or it could be disappointment, or it could be frustration, or it could be fear, or it could be, yeah, I mean, so many unpleasant feelings can arise. And anger is a response to the unpleasant feeling, you know, first of all, pushing it away. And anger actually begins when we start cogitating. You know, they call it, the technical term is inappropriate mental attention. Or what it is it's conceptualizing how bad and how wrong that person is, or that situation is. Yeah, so anger does not arise directly from the unpleasant feeling. Anger arises from the thought, this is bad, that guy is a jerk. And the more, like, so one thought can lead to another, until we can create this big, huge story about how terrible that person is, or how awful that situation is. So the more we develop that story, the stronger the anger becomes. And then it can even turn into rage or hatred. So anger begins with a thought, that's bad, for example, or he's a jerk. And then it's solidifying that thought, you know, and grasping at that thought as being absolutely true and real, and then allowing that thought to be expanded into a big story. So the idea is to catch that thought early and try to dissolve that thought. And so we'll talk about the methods to do that. There are various different methods we can catch that thought early and counteract it. You know, another example of, right, so a desirous attachment arises as a result of a pleasant feeling or an anticipated pleasure. So based on a pleasant feeling of, let's say, smelling delicious food, right? So there's this kind of pleasant feeling that arises, and then we conceptualize, oh, that sounds really good. That sounds delicious. I want to have that. I need to have that, right? So it starts with a thought, oh, yeah, that sounds nice. And then we grasp and solidify that until I have to have it, right? I can't live without it, or I need it, right? We see an advertisement for something, you know, an advertisement for the latest smartphone coming out, and we think, ooh, that looks nice. And then before you know it, we're, you know, on the internet ordering the phone. You know, I have to have that. That thing is going to make my life better. That thing is going to make me happy. So yeah, we solidify and we exaggerate the thoughts as well. So desirous attachment. So anger begins with a thought. Desirous attachment begins with a thought. Worry Worry begins with a thought, right? Cogitating, a thought about what could possibly go wrong. And then if we allow that thought to build up, and then oftentimes we become attached to that thought, and that thought kind of repeats itself over and over again, right? In the middle of the night, oftentimes, right? A thought, right? We wake up in the middle of the night and then a thought arises, right? A worried thought arises, and then we cogitate about it over and over again, and then it creates this big agitation in our minds. So we can learn to catch that thought early and dissolve it. Easy for me to say, right? But gradually, slowly, slowly. That's the idea. And also thoughts of, self-limiting thoughts, that we so believe. Like we may have a thought after we try to meditate. Oh, I'm not a meditator. I can't meditate. Oh no, I'm not one of those people who can meditate. That's too hard for me. And then, it's just a thought, but then we believe that thought, we grasp onto that thought is real, and it becomes a reality, and it limits what we can do, and we do this all the time, right? Oh, I can't fix that problem. Oh, anyway. So self-limiting thoughts are just thoughts, right? If we can just see them as thoughts and let them go, our life would be much easier and lighter. And then thoughts of beating ourselves up or not being good enough, right? Once again, those are just thoughts. But they can ruin our lives. They can create so much suffering. I think, I'm supposed to be perfect. I'm not good enough. I'm not a good enough, student. I'm not a good enough practitioner. I'm not a good enough athlete. I'm not thin enough. I'm not athletic enough. I'm not smart enough. Right? Those are thoughts that create so much suffering for ourselves, but they're just thoughts. So slowly we can learn to recognize those thoughts that bring suffering in our lives. Well, we can learn to recognize all thoughts that arise and not grasp to any of them, right? They're just thoughts. And some thoughts are constructive and some thoughts are unconstructive. But even the constructive ones we don't want to grasp onto. Grasping becomes an obstacle along the path. Right? Grasping becomes a mental affliction, disturbing emotion, right? So we can learn to hold our thoughts lightly, see them. First of all, we have to see them as just thoughts instead of getting involved in them, getting carried away by them, right? So we experience so much unnecessary suffering through grasping and solidifying our thoughts. Yeah. So let's see, what else did I want to mention about that? So one thing I noticed in my own mind is that over the years, I have been very attached to my thoughts, right? Addicted to thinking. Like a lot of us can be addicted to overthinking things. We love to develop theories about everything and everyone, right? We can create stories about people that we don't even know, right? Someone we see in the grocery store, we can, we just see that person, rushing around or scolding their child. And then we can create a big, huge story about what kind of person that is. And we like our story, we're attached to our story, but we don't know anything about that person, right? Yeah, and when we have a problem, we can cogitate about that problem over and 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 over again, right? We overthink things. You know, there's a certain amount of thinking and analyzing that's very helpful. And then there's a certain amount that is obsessive and unnecessary and, yeah, unhelpful. Yeah. So one of the obstacles we need to get over is being addicted to our overthinking. Yeah. And that takes, you know, really looking, observing our own experience of constantly overthinking things and asking ourselves if that's really useful. Yeah. So that, you know, being addicted to our thoughts, our stories, our opinions, our viewpoints, is an obstacle to even wanting to do this kind of practice. So another thing is that, of course, you know, we're not trying to get rid of thoughts. We're going to continue to have thoughts. The idea is to remain aware of the thoughts and let them go early before, you know, not grasp onto them, right? Let them go before they become a full-blown mental affliction, right? The mental afflictions, the just disturbing emotions, those are the real problem. Yeah. Those are all mental afflictions result in suffering sooner or later. Yeah. They agitate the mind in the moment, and they often cause us to create negative karma that results in difficult circumstances in the future. Yeah. And also results in, you know, damage to our relationships, etc., to our reputation. So, okay, so how do we deal with thoughts? So the first method that's usually taught in Buddhism to deal with thoughts is to just recognize them as thoughts, right? It's like in mindfulness meditation, you might be meditating on your breath, and there's one method. Right, okay, so we might be meditating on our breath, and we're continually carried away by our thoughts, right? We're meditating on our breath, and before we know it, we're planning the rest of the day, or we're planning what we're going to eat for lunch, or we're writing an email to that person, right? Or we're thinking about that problem, or we're fantasizing about going to the beach or redecorating our home or whatever it is. Yeah. So in order to not continue to keep getting caught up in our thoughts in our mindfulness meditation, one method is to just label that, oh, thinking. So instead of getting caught up in the content of the thought, just identifying it as a thought, and bring our mind and our attention back to our breath. Yeah. So that's a very common method, right? Just by labeling it, right? By identifying it, noticing that it's a thought, that can create distance from the thought, right? Instead of getting completely caught up in it, right? Create some distance, and we can go back to our breath. Sometimes, yeah, but sometimes the thought is an affliction. It's a strong desire or worry or irritation, and then our minds may go immediately back to that thought. And if that's the case, if we continue, like if it's an actual affliction, if it's a strong thought that keeps carrying us away, then the general approach in the Geluk tradition of Tibetan Buddhism is to apply an antidote, right? Right. If it's desirous thought, you can apply an antidote to that thought, thinking, well, yeah, thinking of the impermanence of that thing that you're fantasizing about, or thinking about the downsides of that thing that you're desiring, right? Because the desirous thought is an exaggeration of the attractive qualities of the thing. So you can apply an antidote, right? Or if it's anger, you can apply an antidote. You can try to develop compassion for that person that we're angry with. We try to see their perspective. We try to see that they're just being caught up in their own mental afflictions, etc., right? So there's a whole host of antidotes for the various afflictions that are very useful to apply especially if the affliction is strong. And then usually if it's a strong affliction, we need to apply the antidote quite a bit. Yeah, and once we're able to let go of the strength of that affliction somewhat, we can bring our minds back to our meditation. Or if it's where we're walking around, just letting go of the affliction through applying an antidote. So those are kind of the standard ways to deal with thoughts and afflictive emotions in the mindfulness meditation, the mindfulness movement, as well as in the Geluk tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. But in Mahamudra, there's another way. So in Mahamudra, we're looking directly at the thought. We're looking at the nature of the thought, right? So instead of working with the content of the thought and applying an antidote to that thought, which deals with the content of the thought, with Mahamudra, we're not looking at the content, we're looking at the nature, the essence of the thought. So, yeah, usually when we're caught up in thoughts, right, we're caught up in the content of the thought, right, and we don't see the nature of the thought. So I'll lead us in a meditation on this, but thoughts are just movements of mind. So the mind, right, the nature of the mind is clarity or clear and knowing, right? There's clear in, non-material, like space, with a knowing or cognitive quality. And thoughts are just movements of the mind. Thoughts are just made of this clear and knowing, this clarity and cognitive aspects. The thoughts are just made out of this space, non-material awareness, right? Non-material cognition, right? Thoughts are, right, if we look at thoughts arise from the mind and they return back into the mind, like the ocean and waves, right? Waves arise from the ocean and dissolve back into the ocean. The waves are not other than the ocean. The waves are made out of water, just like the ocean. And they arise from the ocean and they dissolve back into the ocean. And similarly, thoughts are just, they arise from the mind and they dissolve back into the mind. They're made of just clarity and awareness, just like the mind. Yeah. They're not these concrete, solid things. They're just made out of space-like awareness. Yeah. And when we see that, right, and we have to see that for ourselves. We have to look for ourselves and see that for ourselves. So we'll do a meditation. So the idea here, let me see. So the idea is, so what we'll do is we'll meditate on the clarity and awareness of the mind, right? Like we have before, the space-like nature of mind, mix the mind with space. And then we'll allow a thought to, and so we'll try to concentrate on that for some minutes. And then we'll allow a thought to arise. And then we'll look, so we want to look directly. And the first analysis we'll do is to look at where, and before I get into this, so this is a Kagyu Mahamudra method. It's not so much Galuk. The Kagyu Mahamudra method. And it's very useful to bring the Galuk and the Kagyu methods together. The Kagyu method is to look directly. So not analyzing your thought, not analyzing why you had that thought, not looking at the content of that. But we want to first of all look and see where that thought came from, where it abides, and then where it goes when it disappears. Where does it go? So where it came from, where it abides, and where does it go? And specifically, like, from what substance did it arise, right? Did it arise from nothing? Or did it arise from something, right? So looking, right? Not cogitating, but looking, right? Is like the difference between, right? If I'm trying to find my purse, right? I can sit here in my chair and think about, well, my purse could be in my room, it could be in the closet, it could be on the chair, it could be in my car, right? I can sit there and think about it, or I can actually get up and I can look, right? And so this approach is actually similar to getting up and looking. So we're looking for where that thought came from, where it abides and where it goes. We're not cogitating about, well, you know, Emily said that the thought came from the mind, right? We're looking. Yeah, and what it's made out of. And then what is that thought made out of, right? What is that? What is the substance of that thought, right? And I don't mean like made out of, oh, it's made out of words, right, or images. Now, what is the substance? Like, what is the substance of the ocean and the waves, right? The substance is water, right? And so what is the substance of the thought? What is that thought made out of, right? And so once again, we're looking. So it's important to look for ourselves, like what will bring us insight is looking for ourselves. The point is not to get the right answer so much as doing the looking, right? So I wanted to read something that Trungpa Rinpoche wrote in his book, Pointing Out the Dharmakaya. So he says, having recognized that the thought has arisen, then simply look directly at it. Look directly at its essence or nature, at how things are, through looking at the thought. This does not involve searching for anything particularly difficult to find or anything particularly subtle. And it's different from following the thought, or allowing that thought to produce a further thought. It is also different from analyzing that thought by examining its content and reflecting upon the thought. From this point of view, so in this Mahamudra meditation, from this point of view, the content of the thought is irrelevant. Whether the thought is a good thought or a bad thought really doesn't matter in this case. In either case, it's an appropriate subject for the meditation. Don't try to figure out why you had that particular thought. Simply look directly at the thought itself rather than at the content of the thought. Okay, so any questions on that before we try it? Okay, so we'll do a brief meditation on this, and then we'll see if there are any questions that arise from it, and we can discuss. And then I'd like to sit down and do another meditation on it, and we can work with various different thoughts. It's very helpful to work on many different thoughts and different kinds of thoughts. Yeah, I have another quote to read, but I'll read that after our meditation. All right, so let's sit in our meditation posture once again, comfortably, relaxed. And actually, let's begin with taking 3 deep belly breaths. So breathing in deeply into our belly, holding the air in our belly for a couple of seconds. And then gently exhaling. This brings the energy out of our heads and out of our incessant thinking and helps us to concentrate and feel grounded. So breathing in to our belly. Gently exhaling. And 3rd time, breathing in. Breathing out. And let's meditate on the breath for a short time to settle our minds. Remembering to use mindfulness to keep our mind focused on the breath. Trying not to get caught up in our thoughts. And opening our eyes and mixing our mind with the space. So looking at the space and not the items in the space. Allowing the mind to mix completely with that space. Mixing space completely with our mind. Holding that with mindfulness. Right, so gluing our attention to that space of mind. And expanding that space to the left and the right, and in front of us and behind us, above and below us. And if you need to close your eyes, that's fine. But just keep your attention on that space as best as we can. Trying to not get caught up in our thoughts. Continue our focus on that space of mind. Notice the nature of that mind, how that mind is clear in the sense of non-material. Mind is like space without a physical form. It's just like space. Like space, except there's also an aware quality to it. aware cognitive quality to it. It's not inanimate like space. But it's non-material like space. And aware. So then allow a thought to rise. Let's begin with a harmless thought, such as, I am sitting here. Allowing that thought to arise, and then looking, where did that thought come from? From what substance did that thought come from? So looking directly in your experience, where did that thought come from? Where it abides, and when it dissolves, you can allow it to dissolve. Where does it go? So we can play with that thought of letting it arise and dissolve, letting it arise and dissolve, and see, investigate, look, see where it's coming from, where it abides and where it goes. So we're not looking with an idea of what the answer is. We're looking to find out for ourselves. And then secondly, look at that thought and see, what is it made out of? What is its substance? Like the ocean, the substance is water. What is that thought made out of? And once again, not cogitating about it, but looking. Okay, so let's have a discussion. So what did people experience? You know, you can tell me if it was difficult or not, or you can tell me what you found, or any obstacles that arose, or confusion about what we're supposed to be doing. So you can just unmute yourself and share or ask questions. What did people find? Is it hard?
Hi, I thought it was really helpful. This is Heather. I'm staying at my parents' right now and am sleeping on dinosaur sheets in my nephew's bedroom here, hence the Mickey Mouse poster behind me. And while we were doing this meditation, I heard my mom vacuuming outside the room. And I said I was doing this meditation class. So what I observed is how quickly I observed, okay, there's this sound, and how rapidly it went to this story about, you know, I can't believe, you know, whatever, just like that. There's a story about, you know, I won't even go into all of it, but it's very detailed and complex. And I found that interesting, that it was just a kind of an instantaneous example of what you were talking about, how fast there's a stimulus that turns into this full blown story that requires immediate, forceful response, so that was interesting to me.
Yeah, you are not alone. All right, thank you, Heather.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Catherine. I struggle with just the looking in the space. My mind wanders to all my things and thinking about that trip and, oh, that person and how I want to redo the basement. And I think that I want to tell stories about all the things I see, even if it's outside, even if they're not my things. So I don't think I can make it to the next stages because I'm still trying to interpret my physical space.
Yeah, that's tricky. Yeah, there's a certain amount of we needing to settle our mind before it's becomes, well, I wouldn't say that, I mean, we can still do this meditation, but for this meditation to be more clear, to yield clearer results, it's helpful to have the more settled mind. But we can still do it, especially when a thought arises, right? When the story arises, we can look at the essence of the thought. Like, what is that thought made out of? See if you can do that, right? It's like, what is that thought made of? So instead of you'll get caught up in the content of the thought still, but then switch your focus and try to look at the substance and the essence of that thought. What is it made out of? And see if you can do that. See if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good advice.
But where the thought comes from, where it goes, I mean, we can try to do that as well. But yeah, when the thoughts are uncontrolled, it's a little bit more difficult to do that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that other people are experiencing something similar. Anybody else? Was anybody able to? No, go ahead.
Jackie, I think Jackie's speaking, but she looks muted. There you are.
A lot of people prefer me muted.
I like to hear what you have to say, Jackie.
Yeah, me too.
I was saying it's difficult to express, but like Catherine, I find, Emily, when you give us the cue to look out into space, I think to myself, she has so much more experience because I'm not quite, I'm still a tangled ball of yarn is what I was saying. I can't get to that space quite yet. But in time, the only thing I can say that might feel good is that the yarn seems a little less tangible. And it's not melting. I wish it would melt right into that space. No. But I do see where the different ends, little pieces of myself are stuck on the ego. There's ego grasping, and yet it doesn't matter. How can I say? The plus is that I'm a little less solid. The only reason I'm feeling these feelings is that there's some kind of force that pushes me back into a false sense of I. So I do get that. I still have to be careful because you can see I'm trying, it's almost like a Madhyamika tendency, right, to analyze.
Yeah.
Still coming up though, and I can't quite merge with that space. So I hope that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it's difficult. But yeah, as we keep trying, I mean, it sounds like you're making progress. It's less solid. We can keep trying. And yeah, and you're noticing that you're getting into this Madhyamika kind of analysis. And we'll have that, right? We'll have that grasping at that false sense of self for a long time, right? And see if you can see that that's just a thought. That's just a thought too. Me.
Thank you, Emily. May I ask that this space and my mind is the same nature, and yet why do I feel like there is a me and there's the observer thing, you know? Why do I still have that?
We'll have that for a long time. Yeah, I mean, we could do, well, that's a result of a few things, you know, the imprints of ignorance that we've had since forever. Also, when our mind is not fully concentrated, right? When there's this kind of sense of like the observer, me, and then what we're observing, right? When we become really concentrated, right? When our shamatha practice develops, right? That sense of the observer versus the object really, you know, starts to dissolve. And at a certain point, we have the experience of the awareness merging with the object. But also actually in another meditation that I'd like to lead you in, if we have time, is we can look back to, and actually I think maybe next week we can look backwards and look for the observer, right? We think that there's an observer back there behind the eyeballs. And then we can do a meditation to look backwards and see if there's really an observer back there. Yeah, so it's through the force of habit and the force of the imprints of ignorance that there seems to be an observer or a self versus, you know, the object. But through a combination of concentration meditation as well as the, you know, special insight meditation, we see that there's not a separate thing. But that's pretty advanced. That takes time. But we'll have that sense for a long time. And then in meditation, we can see that it actually doesn't exist as a dualistic like that. But then we'll get up and we'll walk around and it still looks like there's an observer and there's an object. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know if that helped, but that's what came to mind.
It did. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I think this meditation on thoughts is hard, especially if we haven't been able to access the space of our minds more. So yeah, so then it's good to practice more meditating on the space-like nature of mind. And then once in a while, checking out the thoughts. Anybody else have a question or an experience or a confusion, an obstacle?
This is Heather again. I just have I find myself very attached to this idea of progress. So when I'm meditating or when I'm going through the meditation, I feel like this is, I can't think of other words than this is better, this is different, but I find myself saying, okay, this is progress. That almost seems to be like the object of my focus is progress. And I don't know, it feels like I shouldn't be doing that. That's something I should also that's a thought I should be trying to work with I don't, does that make sense? Does that rambling make sense?
Yeah, that's probably we all have that, right? That's natural, right? We all want to make progress. Yeah, and the instruction is to try to let go of that, right? Try to let go of our expectations. Try to let go of our need to see progress, in each session, just to do the practice for the purpose of doing the practice and trusting that it will bring, right? It will bring results over time. But yeah, so we'll have that thought, but then try to let go of it, right? And we can try to let go of that thought by just, like as I was talking about earlier, we could just, right, label it thinking, and then try to just bring our mind back to the object. Or I encourage you to try to look directly at the thought and see the nature of the thought, look at the essence of the thought, look at what the thought is made out of, and see what you find. I'm really curious to see what people's experience is when they look directly at the thought and look at its essence, look at its substance, and just try it. I'm curious to see if that works for people.
Heather, I have the same experience. I think that's why I like mantra and analytical meditation, because I feel like I'm doing, and even if I don't achieve as much, I'm like, it feels more active. And I struggle a lot with the shamatha and these practices. I think that I probably need them the most, but I find them the hardest to do. And I agree, it's maybe harder to like see the progress, because it doesn't feel as like tangible, or like you can kind of count it. I know that sounds kind of against the point of this, but that's kind of the way that I, as an overachiever, that's how I feel when I try to do these practices, if I'm being honest. So I think I don't do them enough because I feel like I fail at them, and so I just don't want to do them.
Yeah, good insight. Yeah, and I think the shamatha practices are hard for most of us because we live busy lives, and our minds like to be active. We're so used to them being active, the mind being active. We're so used to doing and thinking. So yeah, so the shamatha practice, it's hard. It's painful, it's hard to see progress. But the only way we'll make progress is if we do it regularly. Like even if we do it for 5 minutes a day, if we only do it once in a while, then we won't see progress. But if we do it for a little bit every day, then eventually we'll see progress. And actually, and doing a mini retreat is a great way to do shamatha. Yeah, if we spend a few days doing a retreat, then, or even a day long, then we'll see that our mind starts to settle, and then we feel encouraged. We can do it, and then we feel inspired to continue to do it. So, so if there's interest, we could always try to schedule a half day or a day long or a few days of retreat. Even if it's an online thing, maybe we could try something like that, but you can see if anybody's interested.
I think that would be great. I'm sure people would be.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, who knows when we'll be doing in-person classes again. But I don't know, maybe you guys have already talked about it. But at least we could try something online.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there's a little case uptick this week. Who knows if that's going to persist, but for now, everything is still virtual, and I feel like we're just kind of hanging on to see sort of what happens locally here.
Yeah. Okay. All right, does anybody else have anything they want to share or any questions before we try to do the meditation one more time?
Emily,
I
this is
have a
Elizabeth.
question.
Oh, go ahead.
No, no, you go first. I already spoke anyway.
This is Elizabeth, and I was wondering about when you're asking where, when you're looking to see where the thought is coming from, and what its essence is. Like, what's an example of that? Is that like, because I found it really helpful when I first started trying to notice my thoughts and figure out where they're coming from. And I did this exercise where I labeled them like, oh, that's work, so anxiety, or, oh, you know, that's sadness. Is that what you mean, like when you're trying to figure out the essence of the thought?
Yeah, no, we're not looking, we're not looking at the content of the thought, right? You're looking at the content of the thought and saying, oh, well, that's sadness, or that's, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here we're looking at the substance of the thought, right? Like the substance of the ocean is water. The substance of the thought, you know, what is that thought made out of? Is it made out of metal? Is it made out of wood? Is it made out of air, right? Is it made out of, right? Right, what is it made out of, right? So not looking at the content of the thought, but what is the, I mean, that's not really physical substance, but you know what, but it's kind of like a physical substance. What is the substance, right? The physical substance or the essence of that thought, not looking at the content of the thought, looking at the material substance of the thought. It's tricky. It's such a foreign way of looking at our thoughts, right? When we look at our thoughts, we are always looking at the content of the thought. So really, Mahamudra is switching that on its head, saying, what is the essence of that thought? What is it made out of? Not looking at the content. All of our thoughts are made out of the same substance. And so checking up what that's made out of. So let's try it one more time. But Jackie, you had one more thing?
Oh, I don't want to bring it up now. But I will say that when you just said it's not made of anything. So it doesn't give me a place for me to project an image of what that mind is.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, we don't want to project.
Yes, that's it. And that's all I can do at this point.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like it's a quality. I mean, I envision other meditators having a quality or a kind of, I hate to say the word feeling, but a quality of mind that overcomes them. But that's all I can do, is that I can envision other people having that kind of sense of being one or merging. But it's
Well, you don't,
another image for me.
Okay, well, see if you can that's just a thought.
Again. Okay.
See if you can let that one go and
I'll
see.
let it go.
So see if we can, so let's try to meditate on the space-like nature of mind. And then in this case, since we don't have much time, so in this meditation, so we'll meditate on the space of the mind. And then as a thought arises, then try to look directly at the thought and see what that thought is made out of, not the content, right? But try to see the substance that it's made out of, right? Is it made out of concrete? Is it made out of wood? Is it made out of metal? Is it made out of glass? Is it made, you know, look and see what that thought is made out of. So see, right, so instead of conjuring up a thought, you know, you will have thoughts that, that naturally arise. So then look directly at that thought and see what it's made out of. So in this meditation, we won't look at where it comes from, where it goes, right? We'll just look directly at the thought and see what it's made out of. All right. So we'll give it a try. Yeah. And don't get discouraged if you get distracted or you have a difficult time accessing that space of the mind. That's just normal, and it's just part of the process. And through practice, it will get easier. Okay, so let's just sit in our meditation posture and focus on the breath for a few moments. And then open your eyes again and try to mix your mind with space. Trying to keep your attention, your focus on the space. And as your attention wavers, as thoughts arise, see if you can look at the thought, the essence, the substance of the thought, what the thought is made out of, not the content.
Really, anytime.
So we'll dedicate any merit or positive energy we've created toward the deepening of our own practice. May we continue to make spiritual progress, developing and enhancing our own inner qualities. Our own compassion, our wisdom, our concentration, our peace of mind. And bring that out into the world. And be of benefit to bring more peace, compassion, clarity, and healing to the world. And there's just one quote I wanted to read. I meant to read it earlier. Just as the ocean has waves and the sun has rays, so the mind's own radiance is its thoughts and emotions. The ocean has waves, and yet the ocean is not particularly disturbed by them. The waves are the very nature of the ocean. Waves will rise, but where do they go? Back into the ocean. And where do the waves come from? The ocean. In the same manner, thoughts and emotions are the radiance and expression of the very nature of the mind. They arise from the mind, but where do they dissolve? Back into the mind. Whatever arises, do not see it as a particular problem. If you do not impulsively react, if you are only patient, it will once again settle into its essential nature. When you have this understanding, then arising thoughts only enhance your practice. But when you do not understand what they intrinsically are, the radiance of the nature of your mind, then your thoughts become the seed of confusion. So have a spacious, open, and compassionate attitude toward your thoughts and emotions. Because in fact, your thoughts are your family, the family of your mind. Before them, before your thoughts, as Dujum Rinpoche used to say, be like an old wise man watching a child play. So just noticing the thoughts, having a compassionate attitude toward the thoughts, not judging the thoughts, but also not getting caught up in the thoughts as much as we can. Right? Either by just identifying it as a thought or applying an antidote, or seeing if we can see the nature of the thought. See the thought as being none other than the mind, the clear and knowing nature of the mind. The thought has no concrete substance. It's just made out of space-like awareness. And if we recognize that, it doesn't have the power to disturb the mind. We won't grasp. we won't get heavy. It's just a thought. So see if we can train like that until the next time. Just noticing the thoughts, trying not to get involved in the story too much, and taking it easy on yourself, not judging the thoughts, not beating ourselves up. It's a process, you know, rejoicing that we're doing this. And if we keep doing it, we will definitely see progress. If we give up and we don't try, then we won't. All right, so good luck and have a good week. Take care, stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
You too.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.